Welcome. I'm so glad to see all your cheery faces this morning. It's so nice and crispy outside. For those of you who don't know and who are new with us, we are the Rogue Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, or RUF, spelled R-V-U-U-F, period, in Ashland, Oregon. My name is Katie Fox, and I'm a part of RUF because of those 7 principles up there, and how this fellowship carries them out. It has warmed my heart and made joy come into my being to be a part of this fellowship. So we, as a group, are happy to welcome you to our service, both online and in person. We want to thank the members of the stream team who are helping make the online service possible, and the members of the neighborhood team who welcome congregants and support the on-site service. Yay! If you are a newcomer, we invite you to sign up for our mailing list at rvuuf.org, or you can sign up with the blue card out in the lobby. You will receive our weekly email newsletter called News to Know, which gives you information about our inspiring Sunday services and the numerous activities going on at RUF. We are so glad you are here with us for this service, and we invite you to join us in our mission of embracing diversity, empowering connection, and engaging in the work. We begin each service by acknowledging that our building is built on the land that began as the home of the Cow Creek, Umpqua, Tacoma, Shasta, and Lagawa people. We are committed to fighting for the worth and dignity of all Indigenous people in our community and around the world. Duh. I'm glad you can laugh with me. Most of you know that yesterday was Veterans Day, and a very important holiday for many people sitting here in the church. So if you are a veteran, would you please stand up and let's give them a warm welcome and say thank you. I had feared that nobody would stand and you'd all sit in your seat and we'd be standing there going, who? I have some announcements to make. Please come meet Kay, or Kaya Hagen, our featured artist in the art gallery during coffee hour today. It looks so pretty, it's been repainted and made new. Kaya will be available to discuss her exhibit, The Writing is on the Wall. Kaya's reverence for all aspects of the environment, including animals, the earth, and the community, is expressed in her paintings. If you are interested, the paintings are also available for purchase. Another announcement. This is the continuation of a wonderful tradition that stopped during COVID, which is our Thanksgiving feast. Yay! And Jan here is going to come up and tell us a little bit about that.
Hi, I'm Jan Wade. I'm part of the Fun Committee, and we've done this for many, many years. And it's a great social evening and sort of a fun little convivial thing. You do need to sign up on the poster. So we have a seat for you, and we know what you're bringing to eat, and we can sort of adjust that. We also need some help with setting up and cleaning up. We set up the day before, so there's not a lot of work, and then we clean up the day after, so that we don't have the chaos of making it anything but a cozy social occasion. So sign up, think of your best thing to bring, and we'll see you there.
Expect some good food. Most of you have noticed that Reverend Sean is not here with us this week, and it's because he's at the Trust Retreat. TRUUST stands for Transgender Religious Professional UUs Together, and was founded in 2004 by Reverend Sean and Mr. Barb Grieve to provide support for trans religious professionals within the Unitarian Universalism. Upon that founding, they had a dream and a goal to convene a retreat for UU trans religious professionals. And from 2016 to 2019, that dream was an annual reality, until, of course, the pandemic. This week, for the first time since 2019, they are joyfully meeting again. If you're interested, you can find more information at transuu.org. That's the end of my announcement. Again, I want to say welcome from me, Katie, and thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. This chalice lighting passage is anonymous, so I do not know the source, but it's a wonderful, wonderful chalice lighting. This chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get where they expected you to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting, not by number, but by silence, by wild abandon, with a brush you made yourself from a light deep inside. Startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you. Finally, a true story.
It's nice to see everybody this morning. Please join me in opening your gray hymnal to number 347, Gather the Spirit. Please stand as you're willing and able, and we will sing. Jane's going to play a few lines for us so you can remember what it sounds like.
Witness the mystery of this morning. I'm Mitzi, and Suzanne and I are going to light the anti-racism candle this morning. I asked her to please not light it until I finish speaking. I would like to share with you a good friend of mine because she has been an example of what anti-racism is for 70 years. When we were 14 years old, I wrote a letter to the editor of the American Girl magazine in response to an excerpt that was in that issue about a Japanese American girl. And when I read that, I said, that's my story, but I don't like the ending. So I wrote this letter, and I heard from Ruth Adams Knight, who was the author of the book from which that article was an excerpt. And she told me why she ended the book story as she did. At that time, a young girl who was my age read my letter and wrote me a letter, and we became pen pals for 70 years. I consider her one of my best friends, although I met her and saw her only 2 days in 1969 when I stopped to visit her and her family. Phyllis was born and grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, and lived there her whole life until she died a few years ago after we had corresponded for 70 years. She was a complete example of what we as an anti-racism group and I as an individual learned. She's been my teacher for over 70 years. And I want to share her story because I hope it will inspire you to maybe do better than you've been doing in the past. I wanted to tell you 3 stories. First is, she was accosted and injured by in two different instances by a black man. And she had no ill will toward them. She told me about these situations. The one was so humorous, I have to share it with you. She was walking down the street with money in her hand, looking for change she was going to use to buy stamps at the post office. And a black man came up behind her, knocked her down, took her money, was going to take her money, and she knocked him down and got on top of his body until the police came and arrested him. He was not fined, he was not put in jail, and when she had to go to the police station to identify him, they said, "What were you thinking? Phyllis is about my size. That black man is over 200 pounds. What were you thinking?" She said, "Well, he took my money." That's Phyllis. Second story, she worked in an office and she had a fellow worker who was a black girl. And Phyllis was walking home from work, and this friend of hers came along in a red convertible with her boyfriend. They stopped and said, "Phyllis, would you like a ride home?" She said, "Yeah." So she went home with them, and she told me before that when any people that were strangers would visit her, the next day a neighbor would always come knocking on her door to borrow a cup of sugar. And so she said the next day somebody came to borrow a cup of sugar and said, "Did I see you come home the other day in a red convertible?" She said, "Let's see, a red convertible. Oh yes, that was my cousin." Can you imagine a girl growing up in Roanoke, Virginia with that kind of personality? The third story is, when I visited her in 1969, we parked our camping bus next to her house for 2 days. And she said, "You know, after you leave, somebody's going to come and ask who you were. And so if you settle in Europe," we were on our way to Europe, "be sure to let me know your address so I can tell you what happened." So sure enough, she wrote to me when I was living in Germany and said, somebody came, of course, the next day to borrow a cup of sugar. At that time, I had long black hair down to my waist, and I had on a muumuu, which I wore because I could change my clothes in public without anywhere. So it really stood out. And of course, the reason Phyllis wrote to me in the first place is because she had never known or met an Asian person. And when she read that story, she thought, I'm going to write to this girl and get acquainted with her. So when the person came to ask who was visiting her recently, she said, let me see, how was she dressed? Well, she had long black hair and oh yes, that's my friend. She's a representative to the United Nations. When I read when she was probably 19 or 20 years old, there was a news article about a man in Roanoke, Virginia, who committed terrible crimes. And it made the national news. So when I read that article and saw Roanoke, Virginia, I immediately wrote to Phyllis and said, do you know this man? And she responded, yes. He lives a couple blocks down the street from my house. And she said, I am scared stiff of that dirty white man. That's Phyllis. I hope by telling you this story, it will inspire you to be an anti-racist in your life, in your everyday lives and your relationships to whoever you meet on the path of life. And for this, we light the anti-racism candle for my friend Phyllis.
We're now going to do a responsive reading for the Peace Candle, and it's number 577 in your gray hymnal. The piece you get is, it is possible to live in peace. I got to do the other hard work. So it is my joy to read this to you, though. If someone with courage and vision can rise to lead in non-violent action, the winter of despair can, in the twinkling of an eye, be turned into a summer of hope. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence is not a garment to put on and off at will, like the muumuu. It is a seat in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our being. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence, which is a quality of the heart, cannot come by an appeal to the brain. It is a plant of slow growth, growing imperceptibly but surely. It is possible to live in peace. If a single person achieves the highest kind of love, it will be sufficient to neutralize the hate of millions. It is possible to live in peace. If we are to reach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. It is possible to live in peace. The future depends on what we do in the present. It is possible to live in peace. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? No. Yes. No. should be on. Is that better? Yes. Okay. I'm going to bend down so you can hear me. So I'm here to read The Ugly Duckling. Let's see if we can move this up a little. I'm here to read The Ugly Duckling. This is by Hans Christian Andersen, and it's retold by Kevin Crossley Holland and illustrated by Milo So. If anyone wants to come up closer to hear the story, you're welcome. You can come up and sit on the steps if you'd like. See the pictures. Okay, lots of young at heart today. The Ugly Duckling. There's the Ugly Duckling. How lovely it was in the summer country, green oats and wheat green and gold, the thick sweet smell of newly scythed hay. The storks went walking on their long red legs through the shining fields, and the sunlight settled on the shoulders of the ancient castle. It winked in the moat. It warmed all the outstretched hands of the burdocks that grew so thick and tall you could walk under them and pretend you were in the middle of the forest. And among these burdocks, between the castle and the moat, a duck had built her nest. One by one, her eggs cracked. One by one, little heads poked out. Little eyes blinked, little beaks opened. Peep, they said, peep. Quack, said their mother, look around you. So the ducklings blinked at the green world, and the green was good for their eyesight. How large the world is, peeped the baby ducklings. Large, said the mother, you haven't seen half of it. It stretches as far as Church Meadow. When the duck stood up, she saw one of her eggs, the biggest one, had still not hatched. Bother, she said, how much longer? I'd like to go for a swim. One of the old ducks came flouncing through the burdock to visit her. Look at them, said the mother duck. Aren't they the sweetest things you ever saw? But one egg won't hatch. Let me have a look at it, said the old duck. Yes, that's a turkey egg. You won't want to bother with that. Turkey chicks, they won't even go near the water. I'll sit on it just a little longer, said the duck. It's up to you, said the old duck. At last, the big egg cracked open and a chick fell out. Peep, peep, he said. He was large and very ugly. He doesn't look like the others at all, said the mother duck. I wonder if he really is a baby turkey. But when the mother duck took her babies down to the moat, she didn't have to nip or kick the ugly duckling to get him in the water. Later that day, the duck led her family to the barnyard to meet everyone. There they are. Keep close to me, she said, and then no one will step on you. And watch out for the cat. But then other ducks began to gather around the mother duck and her little family. We don't want this bunch, do we? There's enough of us here already. Look at that ugly one. We are not having him. There he is. Then one duck actually bit the ugly duckling on the neck. Leave him alone, the mother duck shouted. He hasn't harmed you. He's too big, said the bitter duck. He's not like anyone else. Isn't that good enough reason? What lovely little children, said the old duck, all except one. The ducks bit him, the hens pecked him, the farm girl even kicked him. And finally, even his mother said, I wish you were long away. Then the duckling ran away. He flew a long way until he reached a great marsh where wild ducks lived. He was so tired he stayed there for the night. The duckling was very scared as hunters came with their dog. So just as he was tucking his head under his wing, so to hide himself, he saw the large dog eyeing him through the reeds. The dog's tongue was hanging out, bared its teeth, but then splash, splash, it just turned away. "Mercy," cheeped the little duckling. "I'm so ugly, not even the dog wants me." So at dusk, he spies a crooked little hut. There's an old woman living there with her cat who could arch his back and purr and make sparks if you stroked his fur in the wrong direction, and her hen who laid lots of eggs. "We're in luck," says the old woman. "We'll have eggs before long." The duckling stayed in the hut for 3 weeks, but of course, he laid no eggs. And the cat and the hen, who thought they knew everything, scarcely let the duck open his mouth. So the duck left the hut. He flew until he came to a lake where he could float and dive to the bottom. The other ducks turned their backs on him, again, because he was so ugly. Autumn came, yellow and brown leaves danced in the wind. Winter followed. One day, as the winter sun set in a flood of fire, a flock of the most beautiful birds floated out of the rushes. Their feathers were shining white, necks were long and graceful. They were swans. They swooped down and circled him above in the air. Then the swans flew way south to a warmer country, and the duckling dived to the bottom of the lake. He was miserable. He knew he loved these birds far more than he had ever loved anyone before, and he didn't know where they had gone. He didn't even know their names. It grew colder and colder, and the ice closed around him. That was a terrible winter for the duckling. All the same, he managed to survive, and one morning he felt the sun shine warmly on his back. Spring had come again. Then the duck spread his wings. They were so strong now and stately. He climbed and he flew, and far from the lake he saw a lovely garden. Then out of the reeds floated 3 swans. They ruffled their feathers and they sat so lightly on the water, and for a second time the duckling filled with a deep sadness. "They're royal birds," he said, "and I'll fly down to them, and if they tear me to pieces because I'm so ugly or because I tried to speak, well, I'd rather that than to be bitten by ducks, pecked by hens, kicked by a farm girl, and frozen by the bitter cold." So he flew down. He swam toward the royal swans, and the swans turned to meet him. The poor thing lowered his head. He stared into the water and waited for them to peck him. But what did he see? He saw he was no longer gray and gangling, no longer graceless or awkward or even ugly. He was a swan. The 3 swans encircled him and gently nuzzled him with their beaks. The children on the side of the lake say, "Look, there's a new one." The whole family, they went and got to get the parents, and the whole family fed the swans with bread and cake. The new young swan felt very shy. He tucked his head under his wing. He was happy, so happy. The white and purple lilacs bent right down to the water for him. The sun shone warmly for him. He ruffled his feathers. He arched his slender neck. "I never knew," he said. "When I was the ugly duckling, I never knew there was such happiness in this." And here's the swan, the ugly duckling, now a swan, seeing himself in the water. That's the end.
this morning is from the memoirs of Dolores Nims. Exploring the Inner World. Rereading Jack Kornfield's book, The Wise Heart, I reviewed my own spiritual growth. It's like bread slowly soaking up milk. My marriages, divorces, and motherhood experiences forced me to grow and to examine who I was. There are times of initiation when we go through a canyon so narrow that we can't take any baggage with us. And when we come out on the other side, we're different. Especially being with the Elder Hostel group, I realized how much I'd gained from my spiritual practice. I have a degree of serenity, clarity, and peace I often see absent in others. Thank you, Joko, Tay, Ram, Ramdas, Jack, and all my many teachers. I see how I maintain my world with inner dialogue. My world will change completely as soon as I stop talking to myself. The themes of my inner dialogue reflect my personal and cultural conditioning. I have a theme of self-improvement, or improving everybody, everything around me. I see how my mind gravitates to improving things, me and others. When I step out of the current of thoughts, letting go of, quote, how it was and how it should be, or how we should be, end quote, I enter the internal present. The opening of the body, heart, and mind is still only preparation for a deeper journey. I'm ready for that journey now. My desires and wants are an expression of my hunger for spiritual connection. In 2005, I wanted to do an overview of spiritual centers and teachers, perhaps driving down the coast and visiting Buddhist centers. This would allow me to see a bigger picture. If we open our hearts to all the world, we must leave nothing out. Freedom and awakening are only found exactly where we are. The aim of a mature spiritual life is to discover and embody the sacred whole of life. I like the following two principles. Number one, each major area of our experience must be included in our spiritual life before freedom can blossom fully. Number two, consciousness in one area doesn't necessarily transfer to other parts of our lives. For example, I received that Jane's story of her drug-addicted son-in-law had made me glad. My ego said, well, at least I don't have that problem. Comparison, arrogance. The addiction is causing suffering to the entire extended family. Sometimes my shadow side takes delight in the suffering of others. One can't do right in one area of life while still occupied in doing wrong in another area. Life is an indivisible whole. It is in a deep and honest listening to whatever has been feared or left out that our freedom will be found.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Merrick Milligan, and my spiritual journey actually starts within Unitarian Universalism. I was raised in the UU Church, so growing up, there wasn't any set of beliefs that I was supposed to believe in. Instead, I was encouraged to seek out my own truth. In my Sunday school classes, we would learn about belief systems around the world, and one year we even took field trips to see what services were like in churches of all different types. None of what I learned made any sense to me. I didn't understand how there could be one all-powerful being, and if there was some sort of God, I really didn't understand why he would care about such a small thing as why one football team would win the Super Bowl over another. I started to consider myself an atheist, and somewhat a militant one of that. I was convinced that I was right. There was no God, and I would seek out arguments with people who did believe in God. As I went into high school, I still held firm on these beliefs, but I started wanting to know more. I decided to learn about different religions, and what I found fascinated me. I started checking out books from the library, not just to learn about religions themselves, but also to read about what life was like for the people who held those beliefs. For one project, I chose to write about Christian scientists, and I actually went to a Christian Science reading room and interviewed someone as part of my research. As I continued to study and learn, I realized that earth-centered religions were starting to appeal to me, and I slowly started to think that atheism might not be everything. The relationship between people and nature, especially water and the moon, made sense to me. My church had a CUPS group, which is the Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans, and I started going to their rituals. The beliefs I found in CUPS didn't completely match mine, but the rituals were calming, and it felt like a safe space to me. I eventually stopped going, but what I learned still seemed meaningful. At this point in my life, my spiritual journey starts to become intertwined with my mental health journey. I've struggled with mental health my entire life, but it didn't really become a problem until high school. I was a good student, I had friends, I did extracurricular activities, but there was always an undercurrent of depression. When I was 15, I got put on antidepressants. I did some therapy, but didn't get a lot out of it. I managed to keep my head above water for the most part, but after my first year of college, I ended up spending a week in inpatient hospitalization. Things eventually got better. I got on a better combination of medicine and learned some skills to help manage my depression. Things definitely weren't great, but I felt like I could function at least somewhat like I was supposed to. As I got into my 20s, I started to explore my spirituality again. I remembered being particularly interested in Eastern religions when I had learned about them in high school, so I decided to start there. I got a book on Buddhism, and as I read, a lot of it resonated with me and what was going on in my life. Buddhism acknowledges the presence of suffering and offers pathways to help get out of it. It introduced me to the concept of mindfulness, which allowed me to sit with my feelings without any judgment. The most important thing about Buddhism that resonated with me was the idea of reincarnation. In my younger years, I had no doubt that the life that I'm currently living was all there was. But the more I learned about reincarnation, the more it made sense to me. And with reincarnation, I realized that suicide wouldn't ever be an actual escape from my depression. If I were to take my own life, things would not truly be over. I would face my depression again in my next one. It gave me the strength to start actively fighting against my depression and gave me the hope that things could get better. Since then, my beliefs have continued to grow and change. No matter how hard I look, I don't think that I'll ever find one particular religion that has everything right. When I was younger, I would have been bothered by that, but I've realized that I'm comfortable not knowing all the answers. My spiritual journey has led me to a path where I can be happy, and that's the most important thing.
I am Kenny Anderson, and I start my words with a song some of you probably know, I'm sure. God bless the grass that grows through the crack. They roll the concrete over, and that tries to keep it back. The concrete gets tired of what it has to do. It breaks and buckles, and the grass grows through. God bless the grass. My brief and spectacular spiritual journey is best characterized by that song by Melvina Reynolds. It is a story of amazing resilience and adaptability at an uncertain and always shifting sands of a troubled and turbulent childhood. But wait, I'm working on a happy ending here. And overcoming the pains and scars of misfortune to persevere in a path of blessed peace, fulfillment, and deep gratitude coming to my UU faith. My journey would be, first, devoutly earth-centered worship, coupled with a love of my early Christian roots, and the arrival to my UU faith in my adult years. I was born in a storm of family baggage as an unplanned love child at the end of the Great War of 1945. My mother was an emotionally fragile candle in the wind, unable to manage the rough and tumble. Nevertheless, I never doubted her love for me. So my child was this smorgasbord of orphanages and foster homes right up through my high school years. And yes, I surely still carry some of the numbing scars, but they did not consume me. They did not suppress my irrepressible spirit. One such foster home that I landed in brings me to a storybook town of South Windsor, Connecticut, a town with stately white homes along Main Street and a patchwork quilt of field and forest with lovely gravel roads and paths down meandering through the tobacco fields which adjoin the vast meadows stretching down to the Connecticut River. In the absence of my biological mother, it seemed to this 7-year-old boy as though Mother Earth herself had intervened and stretched out her loving arms to embrace me. She had set me down in this paradise. I would spend my days in the quiet meadows, teeming with birds, flowers, and wildlife in pure enchantment. There, I worshiped the natural world in a cathedral of earth-centered spirituality. In matters of spirit, I was a self-discovered pagan. Now let me also mention my love of my Christian roots, Sunday school teachers who sang, "In Christ there is no east or west." Hey, if there's a kingdom of God, I've got a chance to enter it, maybe in my salvation. But young liberal divinity students from Hartford Seminary Foundation served as youth advisors to my Pilgrim Fellowship group and guided me through my rebellious and maladjusted, self-absorbed, girl-crazy adolescence. I made lifelong friends at the Center Church in downtown Hartford. That was founded in 1636 by a dissenting Puritan from Boston named Thomas Hooker. I was awed by the group of young, courageous freedom riders who stopped by our church in 1962, returning to tell their stories of sit-ins, rusty jail cells in Montgomery, Alabama, and places south. They became my justice-seeking role models, my heroes, really. I continued to love the holiday traditions, I still do, and some of the biblical stories, but I believe these parables are wonderful, ancient mythology that should never be taken literally. In this regard, I discounted the virgin birth, the concept of original sin, the Holy Trinity, yes, even the resurrection from the tomb, or any faith that would exclude or diminish women or persecute so many. Our arrival at the UU faith 30 years ago at Unitarian Universalist Society East in Manchester, Connecticut, with my wife Suzanne and children, seemed predestined somehow. We entered the sanctuary. We sensed their sincere warmth of their loving presence, took note of the 7 principles they had posted as their covenant. I knew at once I had found my spiritual home. 8 years ago, we sold our beautiful farm in eastern Connecticut, followed our grandchildren out here to Ashland, and promptly came to Roof. I am so fortunate and grateful to be with you in a faith that is also respecting our freedom of belief. It challenges us to new levels of truth-telling. It urges us to conduct a free and open, responsible search for truth and meaning. And it enables our respect for science and reason. It's got everything. Beloved community is here with us right now in this golden moment, in our house of love. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to know, for you to know me at a deeper level. I hope to come to know your brief and fantastic journey also.
Good morning. Got a little cough lozenge. My name's Louise Paré. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. She brings forth all things from within her body. She brings forth all things from within her body. He. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. He brings forth all things from within his body. Brings forth all things from within his body. We. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. You got it. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. We bring forth all things from within our bodies. Forth all things from within our bodies. Words of this chant, which came to me one afternoon as I was driving across the Oakland Bay Bridge, describe the essence of my spiritual journey, the conscious manifestation and embodiment of the divine feminine. Several key life experiences are examples of what this means for me. There was a large catalpa tree in our front yard. One afternoon, my father had flood irrigated the yard. I was 3 years old. Standing beneath the catalpa tree, catching the white blossoms as they fell, putting them on my fingers, I began twirling. I had the following experience. I am a child dancing freely. I am delight coming forth from within. I am the height and beauty and power of the catalpa tree. I am her daughter. She is my mother. Without words, she asks me, "What do you know? What is your name?" Without words, I say, "Delight in movement is my name. All that is bound breaks forth in due time. The essence of life is movement and change embodied within and around me. Ecstasy is as real as grief, and both are of equal value. I am she who dances the changes of life and death on a spring evening in the front yard. When I was 9 years old, my 18-month-old brother Damien drowned in an irrigation ditch on our farm. I had no understanding of what death was. Several weeks after Damien died, I came home from school and went to the bedroom end of our home. I was standing next to Damien's crib. The sun was setting. I started to say, "Damien, telling him what I'd done at school. At that moment, the full force of what death is overwhelmed me like his drowning. I was alone. I started sobbing, and immediately I felt Damien's hands on my shoulders as concretely as I feel mine on my shoulders now. At that same moment, I felt my body flood with a warm, golden glow. And I knew that glow within and through me was Damien's unconditional loving presence. In some of my darkest moments, Damien's name comes into me, and once again, I feel the fullness of his presence. On Friday, October 13th, 2000, full moon night, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, stage 2. At home, lying on my living room floor, moonlight flooding the room, breathing deeply, I experienced myself as the Indian dark goddess Kali, sitting at the gate of my cervix, lapping up the toxic fluids in my womb. I experienced myself as the Indian goddess Durga, riding on my lion, twirling a sticky spiderweb net, catching all the cells that were running amok. In that experience, I knew that what was essential for my healing was allowing myself to receive from others. I was a giver, not a receiver. If I allowed myself to receive the support of every person who was with me on my journey, I would not only live, but thrive in an entirely new way. The body is a multi-layered organism of conscious intelligence. The patriarchal worldview splits spirit and matter, so we create artificial distinctions between what is sacred and what isn't. My life journey is my spiritual journey. All of it. It's all of equal value. What I know for sure is that when I am consciously present within my embodiment, I experience that I am part of the interconnected web of all being. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. We bring forth all things from within our bodies. Oh, yes, we do. We bring forth all things from within our bodies.
Now it's time for the offertory. So let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us. A community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream.
For these gifts and all of the gifts of time, treasure, and talent that are given to this fellowship, we are grateful.
Please join me in our closing song today. It's in your teal hymnal number 1064. And please rise as you're willing and able. Jane has a little intro, and then we're going to give this our best shot.
If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace. Laurelyn Bellamy.